Just think of the amount of paperwork and electronic data that these poor people have to wade through every year. People are just are scared to death of the IRS, but it's not like there's someone sitting there let's compare his W-2 to his tax. No, it's all automated. It's all computers, and certain things, will flag for human review. But yeah, most military service members don't have to worry about an IRS audit.
Welcome to the Military Money Manual Podcast, where every episode is all about achieving financial independence in the military faster than before. We believe personal finance shouldn't be boring or intimidating. Building wealth can be simple, and financial freedom is the ultimate financial goal. Now, here's your hosts, Spencer and Jamie.
So, Spencer, a lot of people file themselves still. Where's the first place you'd recommend them looking if they're going to do their own taxes?
I highly recommend militaryOneSource.mil. You just head over there. It's plastered all over the homepage. MilTax, MilTax, MilTax. You can Google MilTax, MilTax. I think they're sitting on H&R Block software. I think that's who they use, but they branded it, they white labeled it and they branded it under their own thing. It's fantastic. There's no upsells. You don't have to worry about clicking the wrong button like you do in TurboTax, and all of a sudden you're paying $3.99 for the state filing. It's pretty intuitive. All the online tax softwares, they just ask you questions and you just answer the question, yes or no. And if you got a question on it, there's usually a little bubble you can click on. You can read a little bit more about it. If you've got Google's your friend, start there. And if what you're seeing doesn't make sense, then there's plenty of resources on base. One that I want to point people to is the VITA program. It's the Installation Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. So these are going to be military service members or civilians who have base access, and they're trained, by the IRS, but probably just through somebody who did the program last year. And they just help you file your taxes. They can answer pretty basic questions. They're not going to give tax advice, so they can't tell you well, should I do this or that, or should I sell this or, buy that? But they're pretty much just typing in the numbers and holding your hand through the process. I would say that for most questions, for most military service members, they're going to be able to answer, just because I hate to say this, but your questions are going to be very basic. And especially when it gets to the state income tax, everybody ties themselves in knots, but it's actually quite simple to file your state income tax returns. And if you're in a state that doesn't tax your military pay, if you're out of state, then you'll get a refund. And then think about changing your state of legal residence to a state that doesn't have income tax. And then you won't have to have that withheld for the entire year. And that's more money in your pocket every 2 weeks.
A minute ago, you mentioned the help available through the H&R Block software on MilTax. There's also through Military OneSource, you can get tax help and you can call into the phone number. I think I've mentioned on the story before that several years ago, I was confused about combining my IRA and my TSP contributions, and I thought I went over the limit. This was probably my second year in the military, and it said I was going to have a penalty for contributing too much. And so I called them and he answered the question, and then he actually a couple of minutes later called back and was like, wait a minute, did you say you contributed your IRA and your TSP? Because that's different. And so he helped me undo it. And I was very impressed by the customer service. And those are actual tax experts that can help you very specifically with your situation through the Military OneSource tax. I think they call them counselors. And to be honest, if you go to the H&R Block or TurboTax desk at Walmart or some other store in town, they're just clicking you through the exact same software that you're doing through MilTax. They're not tax experts. And all they do is they go through and then they read you the questions that the software is going to ask you. So if you're intimidated by it, just know that most of the people you would pay to do it in a case like that are just going to use the exact same software.
I've worked with some very expensive CPAs on the business side, and the tax form, the little PDF that they send me every year to kind of gauge what they need to worry about for taxes, it's exactly the same thing. It's just asking me questions like, do you have dependents? Can anybody else claim you as a dependent? It's just yes, no, no, and yes. And that's it. They're it's a series of questions, and it's the same thing that you're going to get in the tax software, except the tax software is free. But if you go to a CPA, if you go to an actual certified public accountant, if you're going to go get actual tax advice on a serious topic, that's the bare minimum is you need to talk to a CPA. But for the day-to-day kind of military pay issues, the VITA on base, calling Military One Source, they'll be able to point you in the right direction. And with the MilTax, it's free to file a federal and state tax return. There's a bunch of other resources out there too. TurboTax is free for enlisted only. For basic returns, I would not recommend them, but it is free for enlisted. TaxAct is free for military income less than $79,000. And I think that's taxable income. So that's going to cover most service members, even up to probably major, potentially, depending on how much military pay is increased since I got out, because so much of our income is not taxable. But then if you add a state return, then it becomes $40. TaxSlayer is free federal, but $39 for a state. The Cash App, I know a lot of the youths out there, the Gen Zers, like to use the Cash App. It's supposedly 100% free, but who knows if it does the state filings as well. Free Tax USA is another resource. It's free federal if you're active duty. And then if you file any state returns, it's $15. You can actually just go file straight with the IRS.gov. If you earn less than $79,000, then it's a free file. But their software is not that great. All that being said, MilTax is the best option out there. They don't charge for the state returns. They don't charge for the federal return. Doesn't matter your income. So I highly recommend just going to militaryOneSource.mil and starting with their MilTax. Now, how to get your W-2. So that's going to be probably your most important document that you're going to want to get. You log into MyPay, click on the tax statements on the left, choose the year 2023, and then you can make it a PDF. I believe for MilTax, you can just upload the PDF and it just reads it for you. If it doesn't, it's pretty army proof. I mean, it says like, okay, look at box 1. What number is in box 1? Oh, another thing that kind of caught me up the first time when I started doing my own taxes is the IRS does not care about decimals. They will round up or they will round down, and that's it. They do not care about pennies, dimes, nickels, quarters. Just round, and the software will do that for you automatically. So just put it in with the decimal point, but then it's going to change it and it's going to round it up or round it down, and it's okay. The IRS is not going to come after you for their 1% of 10 cents that you didn't pay.
When you go into MyPay or for the other branch that have other systems to pull your W-2 down, don't forget if you PCS this year and made any money off of your PCS or the previous year, I guess, that there will also likely be a travel and miscellaneous W-2. So in addition to your normal pay, you might have another one if you had any money earned from a PCS last year.
Another thing to note too is, let's say that you deployed to a combat zone in November or December, and the fact that you were in a CZTE, combat zone tax exclusion area, did not catch up to your pay until January or February of the following year. That won't be reflected in your W-2. You need to go get that fixed. So you need to go to finance and say, hey, I was in a tax-free zone for whatever months, and you need to get your W-2 fixed. It's okay. Don't freak out. And they're going to issue you a W-2C, a W-2 corrected, a corrected W-2. That can sometimes take a while. So make sure that you file, in the Air Force, we would file a CMS case. The other branches, I'm not sure what you would use, but make sure that you file that early. The other thing to note is that if you're in a combat zone, you get an automatic extension of your taxes. So you do not have to file by April 15th. You're extended based on your deployment, and there's like a whole calculator on irs.gov that kind of walks you through how much extension you get. But if you owe money on your taxes, you must pay by April 15th. So it's a little complicated because you're like, well, how do I know I owe until I do my taxes? So I would recommend that you at least, and this is not going to affect most people because most people have enough withheld from their military paycheck that most military service members end up with a refund when they file their return. And so you don't need to worry about that so much. But the other thing you can do as well is you can just go on irs.gov and request an extension to your taxes all the way to June or to October. I don't recommend you do that unless you have a really good reason, like the W-2C, when you're waiting on finance to catch up and say, oh yeah, you were in a tax-free zone for that time period. When I was aircrew, we would touch tax-free zones all the time. And then finance would catch up on the paperwork, a couple of weeks later, and then it would be reflected. And sometimes they would refund you the money, but sometimes They wouldn't. And when you got your W-2 at the end of the year, the taxable income number, you would have to go and actually do the math and figure out, okay, which month was I not given tax-free when I was supposed to? And then you file the CMS case, and then they issue the W-2C a couple of weeks later. And then you want to file your taxes based on the W-2C. And one of the questions that you'd be asked in MilTax is, were you in a combat zone during the year? And I believe on the W-2, they include a box of non-taxable combat pay.
Yeah, like QQ or ZZ, there's a code for it. Yeah. Spencer, one of the things I was just, as you were talking about tax-free pay, one time when I had a December tax-free, it didn't process. And instead of getting the W-2C, I just filed my taxes, and then I got that extra money back as part of my tax return, my refund. It like caught up in time for the W-2 to be correct, but not to reflect in my 2023 pay. So it just came back as like my taxable income was correct. My tax-free pay was reflected on the W-2. So it just was an extra, I don't know, $450 or whatever it was on my tax return. So, okay, lots of good resources out there. We kind of hinted at it a little bit, but when do people need to start thinking about, hey, maybe this MilTax H&R Block kind of self-help software, my situation might be a little too complicated. What's the line on that you typically talk to people about?
Yeah, I would say like as soon as MilTax isn't spitting out a refund for you, that's probably the time to go talk to a CPA.
Sure.
For most military service members, if your only source of, I'll say this, if your only source of income is the military, let's say you're single, you receive a W-2, it's correct, all your combat zone stuff is reflected on it correctly, go file it yourself. Go do the MilTax, follow the instructions, and you'll probably be fine.
I would even say if both spouses have, but if you have only W-2 income, even if it's 2 W-2s or 3, it doesn't matter.
Yes. So so then I'll expand the bubble from there. If you're both on W-2, even if you're even if your spouse is a 1099, then you could potentially do it yourself. But I think where the CPA comes in is if you have a business, if you rent cars on Turo, you Airbnb, you have a rental property, if you have multiple properties, and you're starting to introduce, some complexity there. If you got lucky in crypto and you have a large windfall there, if your spouse is self-employed, so again, that gets into that 1099 where if they have a single employer and they're paying them 1099, it's pretty basic. You just type the number in and then you pay your self-employment tax. But if they have multiple 1099s, if you inherited an IRA during the year, or you had any kind of inheritance during the year, especially if it was 6-figure or greater, it might be a good time to go talk to a CPA. And back to an inheritance, if it's a 6 or 7-figure CPA, then you might even want to consult with like a CFP, a certified financial planner, and talk about tax planning strategies and how you can properly invest your money so that you can achieve financial independence, maybe ahead of your peers. A good CPA is probably going to be about $400, maybe $500 based on cost of living increases in the last couple of years. It can go way up from there. Most CPAs they scale their prices based on the complexity of the situation. So if you come to them and you're like, hey, I've got a rental property in this other state. My wife has, her small business on Etsy and she gets 1099. They're going to be like, oh yeah, okay, that's pretty basic, $500. And then it's done. Well, here's the thing is they always indemnify themselves. So they're always say, well, we did it based on the information that you gave us and there's no guarantee that we did it right. I know for me, the first couple of years I hired a CPA, I would do the math myself in MilTax, but it got to the point where it was far too complicated for me to keep track of. I check his figures on the 1040, the form that you filed with the IRS, but that's about it now.
Okay, Spencer, you mentioned a word, tax planning. Typically, we talk about taxes as we approach the April tax deadline. What's the difference between preparing taxes and planning for taxes?
Sure. So tax preparation that's just the grunt work, the nuts and bolts of saying, okay, what happened in last year? What happened in 2023? Now it's April 2024. Collect all your 1099s from your brokers, your brokerages. If you receive, a lot of people are getting interest again on their savings accounts because interest rates are way up. So they'll be sending you a 1099 INT, a 1099 for the interest you received. And
more than $10, you get it from every account.
There you go. There you go. And if you do credit card referrals, I just received, I think, 13 letters from American Express saying, hey, guess what? You made $1,000 per account because we're saying that your points were worth a penny per point and you had 100,000 points of referral. So that right there is a little unexpected income. And my CPA just lists that on a Schedule C. So you don't need to get too complicated with it. The Schedule C is pretty easy. And in fact, MilTax will do that for you if you say that you had some 1099 income.
Yeah.
So tax preparation is that's the paperwork part of it. Tax planning, though, is a much bigger topic. And this is where you can use your time and resources and recognize, okay, look, like I've got a deployment coming up. Let's say it's a 2-year deployment and it's going to cover a whole calendar year. Now you could do things ahead of time, like maybe I'm going to make some IRA contributions, traditional IRA contributions in 2023. Let's say this was in 2022. And okay, so that's going to reduce my taxes in 2023. But then in 2024, I'm going to be deployed and I'm going to have no taxable income for the year. And so I could convert my traditional IRA to a Roth IRA and pay no taxes on the conversion. This was something that I did when I was deployed to Abu Dhabi for a couple of years. I was able to convert my traditional IRA to a Roth IRA and pay very little taxes on it. And that was because I had almost no taxable income that year. So tax planning, for most people, it's going to involve talking to a certified financial planner. But if you do have a big deployment coming up, or if someone's about to retire, or if you're about to receive a bonus, a lot of the branches right now are offering bonuses for different MOSs and AFSCs, then maybe it's a good time to reach out to the Military Financial Advisors Association, MFAA. They've got a great collection of military spouses and veterans and active duty military advisors on there, and they're all certified financial planners or working towards their CFP designation. It's a great outfit and one that I have no qualms recommending. I personally know a bunch of them. Nope, I get no kickback for it, no affiliate links there. I just think what they're doing is great. They're really serving their military community and supporting us. So I think that's the place to go for tax planning. You can also DIY it too, like I did, where I was like, hey, this is an opportunity. If I have no taxable income, I can convert this traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. But the other thing you want to do too, right, is if you've got deployment coming up, you know that your income tax for the year is going to be super low. That's the time to, if you were, say you were doing traditional IRA and traditional TSP before, switch that over to a Roth TSP and a Roth IRA so that you lock in that triple tax benefit. If it's going in tax-free, it's growing tax-free, and it's going to come out tax-free after age 59 and a half. You got anything else to add to that one, Jamie, on tax planning?
I think definitely deployment's a big one. Anything with an inheritance you mentioned, or like maybe you're selling a home and you can you're flexible on the time of when should I pay capital gains on this stock I bought, Meta stock 15 years ago or Google stock 20 years ago or whatever, and when should I offload it, things like that. Planning is important. It may seem like a little bit of a more advanced topic, and it definitely is as your net worth grows, but there's expertise there that can save you thousands of dollars on your tax bill just by timing things a little bit smarter sometimes. A lot of people are kind of scared of the IRS, and we've talked about it before. Like, you don't really need to be intimidated by them. Like, do your best, be legal, don't try to cheat the system. And if you made a mistake, and you made a mistake, and hopefully you have a little bit of money in savings to pay the bill. One thing I like about H&R Block and the military OneSource MilTax software is it comes with audit support, which probably doesn't mean that H&R Block's going to pay for a lawyer for you if you have to go to court with the IRS, but they will help walk through to some extent. If the IRS questions your return, you can at least call them for help and get some guidance on how to proceed before you have to pay for a lawyer. It could be as simple as I legitimately just typoed $1,100 instead of $11,000 or something like that, and it's an easy fix. You owe them a couple $100, no big deal. Don't be so afraid of the IRS that you pay unnecessarily for tax prep if you don't have that complicated of a situation yet.
Yeah, I mean, the probability of you being audited when your income is so low is minuscule. I mean, the truth of the matter is the IRS has bigger fish to fry.
They audit Jay-Z or someone like that, and they like find
Right.
one little mistake, and it'll pay for their salary.
Exactly. So
I don't know why I picked Jay-Z. I don't know why he came to mind.
He's a billionaire, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, but that's exactly right. Like the probability of an audit increases rapidly as your income increases, but it doesn't kick in until you're in like the top 1% of income earners. So you're making over, $600,000, $700,000 a year of taxable income. Because that's the other thing you got to remember is like all these military service members are like, woo, I'm making so much money. It's like, no, you're not. Sorry, man. Like,
not to the IRS, at least.
And not to the IRS. Exactly. Like even as like a dual income, major, lieutenant colonel, even the colonel would be a pretty rare combination. But let's say, like a doctor plus. Now, okay, once you start getting into doctor money, maybe. But the probability of an audit for a military service member is very low. Now, you may receive, I think it was like a CP04 form. I think I got one every year that I claimed tax, CZTE, tax exclusion. I think it's basically at this point, it's just automated. Like, the IRS is like, oh, he had tax-free income. Let's send him the letter. And typically they'll send you like a little return envelope. And all I did was I would print out my DTS vouchers or I would print out my orders and say, yep, this is when I was in a tax-free zone. If you lose one of those, get your commander or, get someone higher ranking than you just to write a memorandum and say, yep, this person was in a combat zone from this date to this date. And that's it. I literally think they just have to check a box and they have to file it away. And that's it. That's the only contact I've had with the IRS when I was active duty was when they would send me those form letters when I was in the CZTE area.
Yeah, it tends to scare people, but it's literally like same as you, just sending in a copy of my either DTS or CED orders.
This was in 2022. The IRS audited 3.8 out of every 1,000 returns. So your probability of getting audited is extremely low. Some of the red flags, they might look for is excessive credits or deductions compared to income. So let's say you claim like $100,000 crypto loss, but your income is only like $20,000. That might raise a red flag. If you're missing income, so let's say that like you forgot that you had a 1099 from somebody, because those all get sent to the IRS. Like one copy goes to you, one copy goes to them, and it's all digital now. So they can just be like, okay, this social security number should have claimed, oh, yep, there it is, 1099. It's just computers doing most of the work now. But the other thing too is if you realize that you've made a mistake, you can file an amended return. And it's not a big deal. It happens all the time. Like Jamie said, like people fat finger, you add a zero where there shouldn't have been a zero, or you forgot to put something in a box that needed a number. It's okay. As long as it was an honest mistake, you just go and file an amended return. And most of the time, the IRS gets the amended return. And just think of the amount of paperwork and electronic data that these poor people have to wade through every year. People are just are scared to death of the IRS, but it's not like there's someone sitting there like, oh, let's compare his W-2 to his tax. No, it's all automated. It's all computers, and certain things, will flag for human review. But yeah, most military service members don't have to worry about an IRS audit. If you're interested in learning more about military travel hacking, pay attention. I created a 100% free course, the Ultimate Military Credit Cards course, to show you how to get premium luxury travel rewards credit cards and pay no annual fees. You can sign up right now at militarymoneymanual.com/UMC3, and I'll send you the first day of the course immediately.
We're talking about cards like the Platinum Card from American Express, the Chase Sapphire Reserve Card, and luxury hotel credit cards like the American Express Hilton Honors Aspire Card.
The Ultimate Military Credit Cards course is 100% free to you. I explain how to verify your eligibility for annual fee waivers with the Military Lending Act, or MLA. I've run the course for over 5 years now, and we just celebrated our 10,000th graduate. Our graduates of the Ultimate Military Credit Card course have saved over $10 million in credit card annual fees. On a personal note, my wife and I receive over $12,000 of annual fee waivers every single year.
The Ultimate Military Credit Cards course is an absolute beginner's guide to travel hacking and opening up your first annual fee waive credit card while you or your spouse is in the military. There's no spam, no fluff. The only emails you'll get from me are related to the credit card course, and you can subscribe at any time, and there's no cost to you. You can sign up for free right now at militarymoneymanual.com/UMC3.
Again, that's militarymoneymanual.com/UMC3. And now back to the show.
Okay, Spencer, last question I have is a little bit on the tax planning side. And obviously we can't give specific financial advice or anything like that, but just in general, how do you respond when someone says they got a huge refund? Like, let's say they got $6,000 or $7,000 back and they're like, oh, great, I have this money now for my vacation. And I'm so stressed about money all year, but now we can finally take a vacation.
Well, if they're stressed about money all year and they've waited to get a big refund, that's a red flag for me. If they were relaxed about money all year and, life was okay and they were socking away 15% into their TSP and they get a big refund and you explain, hey, that's an interest-free loan to the government. And they say, I don't really care. I like getting it all in lump sum once a year. Fine. Like, I'm not going to argue with that. But if they don't understand what withholding is, and I actually see this on Reddit quite a bit, it's always state income. And it blows my mind that people are like, I must continue to pay income tax, to the state of Pennsylvania when I haven't lived there for years and I have no intention of returning there. And I live in the beautiful states of Florida or Texas or Alaska or Washington where there is no state income tax. And all you have to do is file a very simple form with your finance office that says, I intend to live here when I leave active duty. And guess what? Your state of legal residence is now there. And if you want, you can go get a driver's license, but it's not necessary. You can title your car there. You can own property there. You can register to vote there. These are all things that help prove that it's your state of legal residence. But to be honest, none of those things are necessary. And in fact, none of those things establish your state of legal residency. The only thing that establishes your state of legal residency is that document, the DD, I can't remember what the 4 digits are, that you file with finance. And it changes your state of legal residence on your W-2, and you get to stop paying state income tax. Now, even if you're getting a refund after a year, are you telling me that you couldn't have used $1,000 throughout the year? I mean, come on, man, it boggles me. To their credit, when I PCS to Texas for pilot training, we were in finance. They had like the little newcomers welcome briefing, and they had the form, and they were like, look, here's the states that charge income tax. Here's the states that don't charge income tax. Texas is one of them. We're not giving you legal advice. We're not giving you financial advice. We're not giving you tax advice. But here's the form. It's already filled out. Just put your name and your social security number here. And you too can be a resident of the beautiful state of Texas. And I still am to this day.
So yeah, I think a lot of times when someone's stressed about money, it's like, okay, $4,800 of a tax return, of a refund, divide that by 12. Like, you seriously could help yourself with an extra $400 a month if I did that math right. I tried to pick an easy number, but it's still hard for me.
No, you got it, 400, yeah.
Okay, good. And so it's like, yeah, I'm like super stressed about money. And then here's $400 a month that you're just basically wasting away. You don't have emergency fund set up. You're behind on your bills. You're paying 18% or 20% on a credit card bill, 15% on a student loan or personal loan. There was someone on one of the Facebook groups I'm in about money today that was like, hey, how do I get my personal loan with Navy Federal to get a lower rate? It was like an 11% interest rate. Oh. And I was like, well, what other debt do you have? Like, how quickly can you just pay it off? Student loan and TSP loan. I'm like, oh, dude, you gotta go read a Dave Ramsey book. I'm sorry. Like, I hate, like, you gotta go read the Total Money Makeover. Like, that's the only thing that's going to help you at this point.
Yeah. Like, I don't know where people get like confused on this, but like, if you're not a millionaire yet, debt is not good for you. Like, okay, yeah, you can get a mortgage, buy a house, sure. But other than that, you probably should not be in debt. Like, okay, maybe if you're going to go buy a car and you have a plan, sure, fine, whatever. But debt is a tool of the wealthy. Like, when it doesn't matter that you're making interest payments, that's when you can pull out, oh yeah, take out some student loan debt, go back to school, but first get that $1 million and then you can circle back and take some debt out. But when I hear personal loans, when I hear of a TSP loan, timeout, you need the Total Money Makeover. You need Ramit Sethi. You need, honestly, I'm not even going to recommend the Military Money Manual to you because I kind of like the debt repayment chapter. I mean, it'll work, but it's not in depth enough for what you need if you're the type of person who's taking out a TSP loan. So there's so many resources out there for you. You know, having been on my own personal finance journey and paying off over 6 figures of debt with my wife, and you did the same thing, Jamie, but I struggle when I see people that aren't helping themselves because there's so many resources out there, especially if they're the type of person that can go in a Facebook group and say, how do I restructure, how do I refinance my Navy Federal personal loan? If you have enough brain power to formulate that sentence and put it onto a social media app, you have enough brain power to go to your local library, check out any Dave Ramsey book, and just start somewhere. And he's got the baby steps and it works. It works for millions of people. And then you can go read the Military Money Manual and start saving for financial independence because Dave doesn't really tell you what to do after you paid off the debt. Well, he does, but he's wrong. But yeah, just start. Just do something. If I had an airman that was in the shop and they were talking about, hey, I'm getting this like multi-$1,000 refund, I would definitely pull them aside and say, why? Why are you doing that? Show me your W-2, respectfully. And if they're willing to share, like, let me see your W-2, let me see your LESs. Okay. Like, you need to reduce your withholding here. Like, what are your expenses? Are you living paycheck to paycheck? Boom. I just solved it for you. Guess what? Instead of sending the government money, now you're sending yourself money. Start paying yourself first.
That's good. That's good. So that was quite the rabbit hole we went down there towards the end, but we did cover a lot of good resources for MilTax through Military OneSource and some other companies that also offer free tax preparation software, and the VITA program on BASE, the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. Is that what it stood for?
Volunteer
in-person help on BASE if you need. And the best way to do that is just Google the name of your BASE or your post with that VITA acronym, and it should pop up more details there. Don't forget to look. You have to do a little bit of work, even if you're doing a CPA. They're going to make you collect all your 1099s, all your W-2s, all of your accounts, all of your IRA contributions. So that's why in a lot of cases, it's kind of silly if your situation is simple. You have to do all the work to collect it. The only thing you're paying for them to do is to then type in the numbers. So you got to do all the work to collect it. So go ahead and start that if you haven't yet. Get your W-2s, your 1099s, all that together. And then check out Military OneSource's MilTax software. We don't make any money off recommending them. It just is really good. And it's a thing that you can trust because it's a .mil thing through the DoD. And as you know, Military OneSource has a ton of resources for all situations, not just taxes. Even if you need counseling or help or whatever, Military OneSource is like the best place to go for any kind of resource for a military family in almost all cases.
Their number is 1-800-342-9647. And you can also text them. They have a text feature. You can go to militaryonesource.mil, but they do have a tremendous number of resources on there. If you got value from the podcast, from this episode, from any of our episodes, 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts is the best way to say thanks. We really appreciate it. And I'll be lying if I said I didn't read every single review that you guys and gals leave for us. So thank you for that. And every question that we get through Instagram at Military Money Manual or podcast at militarymoneymanual.com is the best way to reach us. We'll catch you in the next episode of the Military Money Manual podcast.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.